going on, everybody? You are watching Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and coming up on today's show, I want to show some love to 5 players on the Vikings roster and why the Vikings pulled off highway robbery, bringing these guys in, and they have been outperforming our expectations so far this season. So we're going to get very positive on today's show. But before we get positive, I do want to talk about one negative move the Vikings made, or at least some people think it was a negative move, and that was the Adam Thielen trade. So the Vikings this offseason, they gave up a 2026 fifth-round pick and a 2027 fourth-round pick for Adam Thielen. Now, they also got a 7th and a 5th-round pick in return, so you're necessarily only giving up a 5th-round pick for Adam Thielen. But a lot of people aren't happy with this move, considering Thielen hasn't really been playing too much since Addison has returned. Jalen Naylor's been rocking that wide receiver 3 spot, but I still think Thielen has a big-time impact in the locker room. Now, obviously, on the field, you wanted him there for the first 3 games when Addison was suspended. Didn't really do too much. Had that one big-time 2-point conversion in Chicago. But, this trade is definitely looking like a bad trade for the Minnesota Vikings. So I'll ask you guys this. Was this trade a mistake? Give me a Y for yes or give me an N for no down below in the comment section. I'm going to still say it wasn't a mistake because considering you really only gave up a 5th-round pick in total for Adam Thielen. So I'll still be typing my N's for no's, but hey, you guys let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Was this trade a mistake? Y for yes, N for no. All right, let's show some love to 5 players here on the Vikings roster who have been completely outperforming our expectations. And the first guy here, Jalen Redmond. This move the Vikings made of bringing him in was absolutely fantastic. Jalen Redmond has impressed me every single week. He feels like he gets better, not only game to game, not only drive to drive, but snap to snap. And this guy's graded out very well according to PFF. Overall grade, 75.0. That's 19th in the NFL out of all defensive tackles. Pass rush grade, 23rd. Run defense grade, 28th. And he's played in 181 snaps. And this was a guy the Vikings need to step up because they traded away Harrison Phillips, got 2 6th-round picks, and then left a hole at the defensive tackle position. But Jalen Redmond's been playing fantastic. And right now, he is on pace to have a 10.5 sack season, which is unbelievable. Here's what his stats would look like for the whole 17-game season if he maintains this pace: 48 tackles, 10.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 7 TFLs, and 3 PBUs. And the craziest part about Jalen Redmond was the fact that he was just a UFL player. Like, all the teams in the NFL had a chance to sign this guy, so I will give credit to Kwesi and his scouting department to kind of find a diamond in the rough and completely pull off highway robbery with this move. Because if you didn't find Jalen Redmond, like, I love Levi Drake Rodriguez. I'm a fan of seeing what Elijah Williams could develop into. But if you didn't find Jalen Redmond, you probably don't end up trading Harrison Phillips. You don't get those 2 extra 6th-round picks. So shout out to number 61. He's looked amazing. And also, it's still just his 2nd year. Like, he's going to get better and better every single week. And I can't wait to see what he looks like at the end of the season. So shout out to Jalen Redmond. He's been playing some great football for this defense so far this season. Now, I do want to talk about Isaiah Rodgers. Probably the best free agent signing so far. And he wasn't, the biggest name. He was actually the first free agent the Vikings signed, if you guys remember, in free agency. But, he is graded out incredibly well. Now, I will say, these PFF grades, I don't want to say they're a little skewed, but when you perform like he did back in Week 3 against the Cincinnati Bengals, having a 99.9 overall grade, obviously you're going to grade out very well for the rest of the season. But still, his coverage grade, 2nd in the NFL at 86.1, overall grade 82.2. Like, Isaiah Rodgers has lived up to the hype. And listen, the Vikings needed Isaiah Rodgers to step up because we know how thin they are at corner. Like, Byron Murphy, he's been fantastic this season, living up to that contract. And Isaiah Rodgers has been, outperforming the 2-year, $15 million deal the Vikings signed him to. But you still got Jeff Okudah. He's been solid in certain spots. Obviously, the Vikings run 2 corners majority of the time. And, when I saw Isaiah Rodgers playing so well this season, the guy I thought about was Brian Flores. Because if you guys remember, Brian Flores this offseason, he was pounding the table for the Vikings to bring in Isaiah Rodgers. And keep in mind, Isaiah Rodgers is necessarily just a rotational corner for the Eagles defense this previous season when they won the Super Bowl. But Flores viewed him as an every down starter, and he has been just that. This is what Flores had to say this offseason on Isaiah Rodgers, saying he's been on my radar since he was at UMass. When the opportunity presented itself that we could maybe acquire him, I was all in. I'm happy we got him. He's got a great football IQ and acumen. That's something we've stressed. And, having a great IQ at the cornerback position is obviously huge for being a corner in the Brian Flores system because you're moving all over the place. They have a very exotic scheme, and it really just takes one guy to be out of place, to have just a huge gap in the zone or huge gap in the defense. That never happens with Isaiah Rodgers. He knows his defense already like the back of his hand. So Flores, he was completely right. But also Kevin O'Connell was talking about it, saying Flores identified him pretty early, saying Isaiah was a guy that Flo really identified early. And historically, I haven't been doing this long with Flo, but when Flo kind of has that tone in his voice about guys, I'm not going to mention the other ones that he has had that in his voice about, but he's pretty damn accurate. And that guy, whether playing for us or somebody else, has immediately shown up. So no pressure on Isaiah, but he definitely got that evaluation from Flo. And, Isaiah Rodgers, like when we were talking about the Vikings defense before the season, he was up there as one of those biggest X factors because he was still a question mark to some degree. Like we knew what we had in Byron Murphy, but Isaiah Rodgers, we didn't know he was going to perform this well, being the fourth highest graded corner according to PFF. So he has been absolutely fantastic. Flo was right. Kevin O'Connell was right, and this was a big-time pickup that is already paying big dividends for this Vikings team this season. But if you guys want to show Isaiah Rodgers some love, definitely a hidden gem that they picked up this free agency cycle. Type his jersey number, type those number 2s down below in the comment section. Show our guy Isaiah Rodgers some love. Now we're going to dive into 3 more players that the Vikings brought in and have completely been outperforming their expectations so far. But before we do so, got to tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor, and that is Factor Meals. Now, if you guys want to eat smart at factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 off and use code VikingsChat50 off, we'll hook you up with 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for a year. And listen, fall season is here, and it always feels like a reset. Between back to school, busy routines, and shorter days, finding time to cook can be tough. That's why I love Factor. Their chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals make it easy to stay on track and enjoy something comforting and delicious no matter how hectic the season gets. And why I love Factor, they got more variety and more meals. Choose from a wider selection of weekly meals options, including premium seafood choices like salmon and shrimp, at no extra cost. And even if you guys are trying to support your wellness goals, they have even more GLP-1 friendly meals and new Mediterranean diet options packed with protein and good-for-you fats. And listen, living busy lifestyle here, covering the Vikings at Chat Sports. I don't always feel like making a home-cooked meal every day, and that's where Factors came in and completely changed my life. So head on over to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 off. Use promo code VikingsChat50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping for 1 year. That's code VikingsChat50 off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for a year. Get delicious, ready-to-eat meals delivered with Factor. This offer is only valid for new customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. All right, let's talk about the remaining guys here because I think Kwesi, even though we are very critical of him in terms of drafting, he has brought in some guys. And, one guy that he actually did draft is LDR, Levi Drake Rodriguez. He's been awesome at the interior of the defensive line for the Vikings. This was a guy they, sought out in the draft. There was a report coming out that they weren't going to leave that 2024 draft without LDR, even if it required them to trade up. Like, this was their guy they're targeting in the 7th round. And listen, the PFF grades aren't going to completely blow you away, but for a 7th-round pick, he has been fantastic. Like, I would take this production out of your kind of backup interior defensive lineman any day of the week. Overall grade, 68.9, 43rd, pass rush. Not his calling card, but against the run, he is fantastic. 67.4, that's 34th in the league. And if Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen can play up to their standard, play up to their contract, which we all know they're capable of, the defensive line can really start being dominant because the Vikings actually this season, they have 6 sacks from the interior defensive line, only 5 sacks from the edge position. Now, obviously, Jonathan Goddard, he's 6th in the lead in pressures. So, he's still getting home to the quarterback, but he's forcing these quarterbacks to step up in the pocket, and that's where these defensive linemen have been very, very effective. But if you can just get a little more out of Hargrave had an awesome game against the Cleveland Browns, had an 89 overall PFF grade. Jonathan Allen, still need more out of him. But if those two can continue to get better, continue to get more comfortable in the system with LDR and Jalen Redmond, the sky's the limit for this Vikings defense. And another guy that's been amazing defensively, Theo Jackson. There was a lot of pressure on Theo heading into the season, considering the Vikings let Cam Bynum walk, and this put him into a starting role. And, he has been that Swiss Army knife, along with Josh Metellus for this defense. And, he's been all over the football field. Whatever Flores asked him to do, he does it at a pretty high level. And this guy, he's just always in the right spot at the right time. And he's been pretty damn good for this Vikings defense because he had to step up also. Harrison Smith not being there. Obviously you lose Cam Bynum in free agency, and this guy's been playing some good football. And he's also been outperforming his contract. The Vikings, this was their first move of the offseason before free agency, was locking up Theo Jackson for a 3-year, $9 million deal. That's a steal for a guy who is a quality starting safety in the National Football League. $3 million per year for Theo Jackson. I'll take that any day of the week. And plus this guy, 6th-round pick, Like the Flores, like what he does with these guys who are fifth, sixth, seventh rounders, guys who are kind of castaways from former teams. They bring them in. They play their best football with Brian Flores. Like that is why the Vikings are able to attract such good free agents because on both sides of the ball, you get a guy like Flo, where all defensive players are like, yeah, I want to go play with that guy. And then with Kevin O'Connell, people are saying, yeah, I want to go play for KOC offensively. That's why the Vikings have been dominating free agency over the last couple of seasons. So Theo Jackson, just another good pickup. And then the best trade that the Vikings made, and still my favorite addition of this offseason, was running back Jordan Mason, who you necessarily got for trading down 20 picks and gave up a 6th-round pick for him. But Jordan Mason's been still fantastic. And, he has been fantastic against a shaky offensive line. And, I truly do believe Jordan Mason is just getting started for the Vikings offense because, before the season, we talked about Mason. His biggest impact is going to come, later on in the season when it gets cold and you got to travel to Lambeau. You got to, potentially have to travel to Seattle when it's colder out. Like, that's where we'll feel his impact. And plus, once the offensive line gets healthier, you get Donovan Jackson back, you get Brian O'Neill back. Like, this offensive line could really start getting going once they get healthy. And a big reason for that is because the running back. Jordan Mason has been awesome this season. Once he gets healthier, once the offensive line gets healthier, like, he should have a massive impact down the stretch. But if you guys made it to the end of today's show, hit me with a SKOL down below in the comments section. Bye week, no game this weekend, but we got our eyes set on Philadelphia. So we'll see you guys next time. As always, SKOL Vikes.